And we're discussing we're rambling, we're discussing. It's a source for thought and ideas. On our lunch break, me and Josh Blackburn, Captain Blackburn, how you doing today, buddy?
I'm doing well. We're about ready to get some snow, I hope.
Yeah. Do you guys? I was going to ask. Do you guys have snow yet?
No, I was coming into the office and they were letting all the schools out at the same time. It was like a flood of cars and buses and children everywhere. It's fun. It's fun times. But so yeah, I'm here. I'm waiting for the snow in my office.
Oh gosh. All right. Well, yeah, we're supposed to get snow too. Definitely cold. It's been cold. I'm cold. I'm bundled up in this.
Yeah, it's almost like winter.
Yeah.
I kind of like winter. I like it and I don't. So
I get that. Well, the thing that we're doing as we ramble, we like to have a little direction, and what we're doing is talking about what we would tell our younger selves. And what came up for me is the last thing we talked about. We were talking about men and violence. The last little bit we were talking about, and
guys are problematic.
What?
Men are problematic.
Men are problematic.
We think we're problem solvers, but we actually make more cow pies than we think.
Yeah, I get that. Yeah. Maybe. Well, so the thought I had was arguing. Okay, so I'm going to drop a bomb here. I don't know. I almost made it arguing with women. I decided to change it to arguing. And someone told me that men should never argue with women because particularly women that are in their lives that they are protecting, because I can't remember what the reason was, but because basically I think what I gleaned from it is that women are looking for someone to show the way. Like it's like women in my life are looking for someone to lead and show the way, not to make a case for something.
Maybe. I don't know. Are women that lost?
Well, wait a minute. You're the one who just said, wait a minute. Well, what do you think about arguing? What do you think about arguing?
Before we jumped on, I like to take umbrage with words because it's the house in which we live. I mean, like our words create the way we view things. Mm-hmm. And we use that because I work with couples and people use that phrase a lot. Like we argue. And my response, or we fight and we argue. And it's like, it's fighting.
That's different.
Maybe. I mean, well, we'd have to get a little, investigative and find out what people mean by those terms.
Right.
But on its face, right, is fighting ever appropriate between intimate partners? Would you really want to fight your intimate partner? I mean, like, fight them. Fight club, fight them, right? No.
Right.
No. So, like, we've got to take fighting off the table because that's not appropriate.
Now,
arguing, right?
Like, okay, but here's the thing is, though, I would, speaking of intimacy, there is a certain amount of intimacy between men. Yes, not sexual, but fighting, I think, is appropriate.
Yes. But that would be, again, like
if you were to ask, do you ever want to fight with your best friend or brother? I'd say, yeah, I'd fight him. I don't see that as like a
yeah, but you would be doing it literally, like, hey, let's go a round or two.
Yeah.
But it would be consensual, right? And not like a street fight. Not like a real fight. Like there's a fight where I'm gonna punch you, and then there's the fight where I'm gonna disable you and probably think about ending your life because I'm gonna end the threat.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking about really subtle distinctions in what we mean by those things, but there are.
I think we have to be careful. Yeah, with how we
word
define.
Signals something, but there are real differences between like, oh, I think you're a threat. I'm gonna act like you're a threat. I'm gonna get emotionally motivated as if you're a real threat, and which is what people do, right? In fights and arguments, oftentimes. That's why they go sideways, even though that person's not really a threat.
Something amazing, right? So you're talking about like going back to
Can
or family.
Yeah. I mean, you can watch people go from like 0 to 60, 0 to 90 pretty quick. And then use words in a way that's quite aggressive and sometimes violent.
Well, what's interesting about that is that control, right? I mean, basically what you're talking about is control. Like if you are fighting to control somebody, that's a different fight than fighting to work things out, right? Like to work out feelings.
It's probably on a spectrum. I mean, I got a whole stump speak because I don't like the word control. Because with human beings, absolute control over a human being is very difficult to achieve.
Oh yeah.
The way I put it is like if I went on the street and snatched somebody and put them in my basement, and I'm controlling them at that point. It's kidnapping. I'm controlling them. They will fight you passively, actively. The human beings just we like freedom. We want to move about the room. We will resist control.
Well, that's why I brought it up, because when you're talking about war or street fighting or ending another person's life, that's control, right?
Well, that's defense, right? Wars are always fought for political.
But defense is control. You're trying to control them. You're telling them you cannot do this.
No, I'm not telling them anything. I'm using power at that point. It depends. Like if I'm restraining somebody, right? Or I mean, if I break your leg, you still have, that's not control. I mean, you still have free use of your arms and leg, the other leg. I mean, coercion, persuasion, right? I'm trying to influence a decision. Threats, like coercion is probably coercive. What's often referred to as coercive control is a thing that's probably more prevalent than people want to give a sense to.
But that would be more with like power or words, right?
Yeah. Well, it's like physical. I'm going to get you to do what I want you to do by threatening you with me being disagreeable or aggressive. And maybe I don't have to do aggressive or disagreeable. I've done it in the past. And now, like when people say I'm walking on eggshells, that's coercive control, right? I'm acting this way, not out of freedom, not out of choice, but because I want to avoid the negative consequences of this other person's displeasure. Oh, okay. All right. I got it. Like that's a way people, I mean, a lot of people live that way. It doesn't feel good. It doesn't achieve mutual and consensual ends. Right. I mean, maybe sometimes it is agreed upon, but that's why I like pushing against control. Cause I'm like, adults are kind of free and and if people lean into that, then all of a sudden it's like, oh, I don't actually have to do what I think, and oftentimes it's what I think that this other person wants, not necessarily what's been clearly articulated and spoken, like, or there's some agreement, like when I come home, I expect them dishes to be done, right? And then I'm going to be all, if they're not, or I'm critical, like I can't believe them dishes aren't done. Why is the dishes not done? Of course, I don't say it like love of my life. My favorite person out of 8 billion. Why is the kitchen so nasty?
But you said you don't like to argue.
Yeah. So going back to, like, I've got stump speeches for all these words, right? People want to argue. The problem is arguments are only good for courtrooms where there actually is a judge, where and a third party is going to render a decision, right? You don't argue when you negotiate. You negotiate when you negotiate. If you're brokering an agreement, you're trying to get consensus. You're trying to get buy-in. It might be compromise, but what's wrong with shooting for a win-win, as opposed to like I lose, you lose, and then I gain something, you gain something. If we put it in a metric, like you get it. Yeah,
there's a famous book, Getting to Yes. When you are negotiating, you're looking for the other person. You're looking for mutual interest, not for mutual. You're not trying to gain ground in negotiation.
There's different theories about it. I mean, I had one mediator, back when I was doing legal work as a paralegal, that described a good mediation as where everybody loses something.
Yeah.
Where everybody gives something. And, I think there's some credence to that. There's also, everybody gets something. But that's not the only end. Like, that's not the only telos, the only purpose. And I think when it comes to communication, what people often lack is a serious clarity of purpose and intention. It's like, what do I want to get out of what we're doing next? So if I'm in a courtroom, I'm going to argue. I'm going to present arguments in an attempt to establish a case and persuade the judge to render a decision in my favor. As opposed to, like, if I'm talking with my wife about what purchase we're going to make, that's a decision, right? Like, in that process, do we have enough data to make the decision, right? Versus, hey, can I talk to you for 10 minutes about how crappy my day was? Because it just feels good to let another person know how my day was like. Versus, like,
I get that. I don't like the analogy because, court, I mean, in a court case, you're not arguing. I mean, there's really only two places to argue, in the opening and the closing statement. Most of it is producing evidence.
So that's part of establishing a case.
Yeah. You're establishing a case. To me, argument and establishing a case are two different things. Arguing is...
It's still a courtroom metaphor, though, right? Because there's no third party that's going to determine what evidence is admissible and what evidence is not. It's like, hey, babe, I want to do this because of A, B, C, D, right? And it's often that's evidence. Like,
But your premise is that argument requires a third party judge.
Well, I go deeper. Not only does argument require a third party for decision rendering, it is an adversarial process, and always is and always will be.
Well, that is true, but I mean, they don't necessarily. They're not. I mean, they can be mutually exclusive, right?
No. Not in a courtroom.
No, but I mean, but arguing isn't necessarily for a courtroom.
This is why I like precision of words, right? So, I mean, like, what we do oftentimes isn't arguing, it's debating, which is a different framework. It's with different desired outcomes, with different rules.
But it still has argument. You still make arguments.
Yeah, I mean, from one sense, yes, you can present arguments as far as like you're making verbal propositions that you are going to determine
you're going to work together towards a premise, right?
Right,
like towards an argument.
And again, at some point there's differences and distinctions. So it's again my attempt to use more precise language to figure out, like, because
So what is your intention there? Like where, because what does it help to clarify that it's not actually argument, it's something else?
Well, again, you gotta figure out who's in, like, what are the roles and what's the scene and situation, right? And people often approach intimate relationships, parenting, as if it's a command and control structure, or it's some kind of courtroom-esque hierarchy. But it's often convoluted. I mean, I'm throwing this out here because I'm calling into question how people preface and approach communication in their relationships in general, and how words implicitly frame out, like, what are the roles, what are the rules, what are the expectations, and when it doesn't work the way we think it should work. And I watch this happen all the time in my office, where it's like, I'm not able to get my partner to render me a favorable position. So what do? I elevate my voice. I start speaking faster. I throw out more facts. I try to undermine where they're at. I might use an ad hominem, like attack. Right? It gets kind of weird, as opposed to like, whoa, what are you all trying to accomplish? And are the means actually supporting the ends? So that's why I like to throw argument out right off the bat. It's like,
I get that. But what about, because remember, come back to it, you said, you started to defend women in the sense of like, well, they should be able to argue, so what about like arguing in terms of self-advocation?
Sure. But why not just call it self-advocacy?
Well, because
or self-expression, or
Yeah, but I mean, isn't that just getting into semantics, though?
I don't think so. Because it removes the adversarial, again, like arguments, unless we're talking strictly from like talking about
standing up for yourself is adversarial, right? Like there's certain places in which we have to say, no, I don't believe that.
You have to define the situation, right? I mean, if we're talking about intimate partnerships, if you're in an adversarial intimate partnership, you need to leave.
But I mean, partnerships get adversarial all the time.
Do they? Should they?
Yes, because we're very different people.
That's not adversarial.
Well, just because it gets adversarial doesn't necessarily mean that's your adversary, right? Like
I would say ethically that's always inappropriate.
What?
I'm not saying people don't do it. I'm just saying
get adversarial.
That's inappropriate.
It's always inappropriate to be adversarial.
If I'm an adversary, I'm coming for you. I want you punished, and I want to take your stuff.
Wait, but maybe that's wait a minute. In the Christian life,
I'm gonna power
our adversary. We love our adversary.
Mm-hmm.
We don't punish our adversary,
right? Which makes them not your adversary.
Well, that's not necessarily true. That's not necessarily true. If there is, what's that?
From my end of things, it does.
I mean, if somebody is
like verb versus noun, right? Like, love your neighbor, right? Love those who, hatefully despise you and persecute you, right?
Yeah.
But I don't adversarially approach those people with love. That's contradictory.
Well, but it says to, right?
No. Where does it say that I should adversarially approach anyone?
No, adversarial approach your adversary with love.
Say again.
It doesn't say to approach them adversarially, but it does say to approach your adversary with love.
Sure.
If somebody wants to end my life,
way of approaching another person.
What's that?
Which is the non-adversarial way of approaching another person.
Okay.
I think love and adversarial positions are at cross purposes. Now, and this is where we could step down and get into issues like debate. Like, what do we do in a situation where the outcome, or even the desired outcome of this process, communication, because when we're talking about words, but words can get a little like it crosses over into areas of like, I'm threatening you.
Yeah.
Right. What do we do with these spaces where it's gray, right? Where the outcome is not already known, right? And that's the thing where it's like we use phrases like exploration or brainstorming, or we're going to workshop this thing, or brain trust, or that's why I like to steer clear of some of these other words, just for more precision, because again, like it's framing out like, how should I approach this? Because when things get really moving on an emotional level, people start moving fast. You can hear it in their speech. They talk louder, they talk faster, they get sloppy with their words, and sometimes they get downright mean and like that. And I've done that. I mean, like if I go back and talk to myself, like going back to kind of like midlife. What would you tell yourself? I'd say, don't argue. Don't argue. Don't argue. If you're actually in a position of strength, you don't need to fight. You don't need to be an adversary. You can stand where you are and accomplish what you desire with your words.
I mean, I definitely agree with that. It goes along with my desire to not. So my philosophy to not give advice.
Right.
Unsolicited advice. It's like an argument, right? It's like, here's an argument for what you need to do.
It could be perceived that way, yeah. Or it's often argue. I mean, yeah. Advice is interesting because sometimes it hits people like unsolicited criticism. You're doing it wrong, or like you're incompetent. You obviously lack the knowledge to get where you want to go. And people, again, like some people perceive it as control. It's intrusive, right? And they resist it. That's why, like, you know, one good reason to not give advice, well, I'm advice giving here, is that people don't take it.
Yeah.
They just don't. Like, we're just kind of wired that way. We're weird.
I've been thinking a lot about this because I did notice, like I noticed in myself, and it comes from some Jay Haley stuff, you know, some, strategic. You know, realization that when you tell people to do a certain thing, they're going to do the opposite, you know,
right?
Because there is something in us, particularly though, it's kind of a cultural thing. It's kind of a Western white person thing. You know, it's where we don't tell me what to do, and not just white person, but you know what I mean? Like, it's not, you look at Asian cultures where there's a lot of submission and built into also,
it is, but it's also conditioned by the structure, right? One family can't tell another individual person what to do.
That's true. Community within a structure.
The government, I'm going to tend to obey my government. Right, but outside of this hierarchy, it's like, no, I'll fight you.
Yeah,
you know, depending upon how it's laid out, the relationships between people. But yet, you are absolutely right. Yeah, it's a bunch of individualists. We don't like to be told what to do. Right. We push back, and sometimes push back hard.
Yeah, it was an eye-opening thing to start reading and looking at what Jay Haley and the whole brief therapy, you know, approach says about instead of giving directives, sort of explaining, you're not going to listen to anything I say. You're not going to do what I tell you to do. And then they come back and say, I didn't do what you told me to do. I know. I told you that.
Yeah. Oh no, he was a master of very strategic interventions in an attempt to get. But again, like this is funny. Like, this is actually a really good example. Like, Jay doesn't argue with people. He's already seeing the bigger picture and trying to figure out, okay, this person wants to get over here. How do I assist them getting there? And he already knows, like, if I just argue, like, let me state the case for why it's the most rational. No, he already knows that, like, that doesn't work.
Yeah.
Like, that rarely works. Occasionally that works, but most of the time it doesn't work. He knows he's got to do something else to move this person over here, to inspire them, encourage them, push them, nudge them, whatever.
And it's more complex than reverse psychology. Like, a lot of people know what reverse psychology is, right? I mean, we think we do. I think I know what it is. But really, it's very complex. There's what is he? It's been so long, but he has terms for these things. And brief therapy has terms for all this stuff, but it is about making people uncomfortable instead of telling them what to do, just letting them sit in the uncomfortableness. I think he told one kid who needed I think he was had the bad habit of picking his nose or something. He just said, record every time you pick your nose. But he also told him, double bind. That's what he puts people in a double bind. He also told him, but you're not actually going to record everything. So, you know, when you come back, we'll deal with that. And so he puts him in a double binds.
Yeah. And I think it's a beautiful, you know, like, he was wise enough to understand how people work, but also wanted to be helpful. I mean, and it's difficult because I imagine, like, you know, there is a collaboration there of trying to, you know, wrap your head around, like, where does this person want to change, and becoming assisting in that change. That's a very unique scene and situation where, you know, somebody is effectively handing over some power and influence, and ideally, like, and Jay does this almost, as best I know from, you know, good strategic therapy, he's handing it back eventually.
Yeah.
In short order. Whether
that's the whole purpose, right? To get them to change their behavior as quickly as possible, to experience the benefits of not doing whatever they don't want to do. Anyway,
doing what they want to do, right?
Doing what they want to do, yeah,
right?
Yeah, exactly.
I want to be
positive,
a
not the negative.
Fingers out of his nose.
Yeah. Well, and so, what would you tell your younger self? I think I agree. I would say don't argue, but that's the negative. What do we tell them as a positive?
Right. Ask for what you want.
Be clear with what you want and ask the other person. So right. I need to ask for what I want and be clear about what the other person wants. Right.
And again, at some point we're negotiating, we're trading, right? We're wooing, we're attracting. Can we do things in that sort of way? And sometimes it's like, look, I'm not going to being able to accept that you're not going to get what you want. And that's okay. You'll be all right. But I think even deeper in that, the real struggle and challenge is being clear about who you are and what you're about and what you want and need, and being able to stand firmly in that without being aggressive or defensive, right? Like to just be, to use a pretty abstract term, secure.
And aware, right?
Oh yeah, for sure. Right. Like don't be on autopilot, because a lot of this stuff, when people say they're arguing, what they're really doing is they're just fast forwarding through a bunch of old scripts that they learned from their parents and society, and they're playing it hard against one another. And it's a lot of autopilot stuff.
Yeah, well, it has to be, right? Because if we get into high arousal state of anger, we're usually, because we're protecting, the anger is protecting our personal worth, our self-worth, our
right. I feel like
values.
I'm under threat. They're going to take away all my toys. But as an adult, it's like they're probably not going to take away your toys. You're actually going to be okay. And all the things that you needed to do to keep your toys and get more toys, you needed to like get out of autopilot. And get a little wise and a little more aware, and move a little slowly with a little bit more.
But it's hard. It takes some being proactive, because when we're in that state of arousal, it's hard to recognize it and slow it down.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, and that's a fun practice. Like, oh gosh, here I am again. How do I get out of this fast? How quickly can I get out of this?
Breathing is a good start.
Breathing's always good. Touch some grass, touch another human being, look them in the eye. That always actually will, oddly enough, help.
What does?
Looking people in the eye.
Really?
Yeah. If you watch people very closely when they're saying really nasty and mean things, they're often not looking at each other. Like really looking at each other. The way lovers would, like, and I'm thinking more particularly between like husbands and wives and intimate partners. Like they're not really looking at one another in a way that's like, ooh, that's intimate. That's really sexy. Ooh, I can tell that you really love this person by the way you look at them with your eyes. And that takes practice, because we often can't see our face. Actually, generally, we can never see our face. Looks can kill, right? I would just go with that phrase, right? Like, that would probably be something I would share with my younger self. Like, hey, man, looks can kill. And, if I could talk to myself, then it'd be like, and you know that. Why aren't you more aware of this? Soften your face. Soften your voice.
You've come back to that several times. Soften your face.
Soften your face.
Raise your eyebrows.
Soften your eyes. A flash of anger is, like, it can be very alarming for other people. It's gonna, and the flip side of that is like, look, this is like, if I had advice for other people, it would be like, look, other people are going to have emotions, and that's okay. You want them to have them. You want them to manage them. You want them to realize what they are. But you also want to witness them dealing with them appropriately and working together as like a team to achieve whatever the team desires, right? If it's a husband and wife or a family or a parent and a child or, whatever, right? We're working, we're nested in all these relationships, and we work best collaboratively. Sometimes we don't. And that's the other thing. Like, we could talk about adversarial processes and how that actually creates interesting and sometimes very useful outcomes. That's also a thing. I'm just not.
So adversarial processes are good or bad
in some context, right? Like, right.
All right, yeah.
Like our whole system of jurisprudence is built on precedent. Precedent is built on people conflicting, right? And there are rules to this whole process. It's not perfect, but it works more or less. Same thing in the political sphere. It can be adversarial.
It's interesting because I do think when people say argue, I think how people define arguing, and I respect your desire to interpret it more precisely,
right?
But I think when I say arguing, what I mean is not a presenting a case in front of a judge. It's actually more messily expressing my emotions at the same time as expressing my logical or my thoughts. So expressing my thoughts and emotions, really.
Right. Yeah. Subjective self-expression.
But I mean, aren't we for expressing our thoughts and emotions?
Yeah, but I guess what I would want to call that is subjective self-expression, as opposed to like we're having a philosophical conversation where
nobody calls it that.
Why not?
Because definitions.
Because they don't like using precise language and they're sloppy. That's what I would say. Stop being
sloppy. I mean, that's not sloppy. It's just like words for things. Nobody uses that word for it.
So just because that's okay. Just because. That's a great ad populum. That is a great ad populum statement, right? Well, that can't be true because nobody uses that phrase. Why not?
Well, I mean, that's kind of important though with definitions, right? Like if you make up a word, we should call it fliggity bobbity. Well,
that's not.
Nobody will know what you're talking about when you say
subjective self-expression as a term. I think is about as precise as I can make that.
Right?
Versus arguments is too big of an umbrella.
Means.
Right?
What's that?
If I want to convince you about a certain, concept about time, I'm making an argument, right? It's somewhat objective. It's external. It's subject to the rules of logic. I'm trying to understand what my thoughts are and my feelings are in real time. Subjective self-expression, right?
Yeah, but subjective and self-expression, these are two very subjective terms, right? Like self-expression.
No,
they're not very precise.
No, they're very precise. You're expressing the things from inside of yourself, what you feel and think. It's subjective because it's not objective. No one else can know it but you. You are the subject. I press this with people all the time as far as like one of the most compassionate things we can do to ourselves and others is use precise language. Imprecise language causes a lot of problems. The implications of imprecise language is deadly. So, I mean,
how?
That's kind of a place I come from on that. And if it's not precise enough, we keep bantering it back and forth till we grind it down to a really good point. Because argument's too broad. There's so many, right? There's so many things implied in that one word, right? That if I separate it out into 3 words,
so
all of a sudden it's getting a lot more precise as a term.
So you're saying, I think I agree with this, or maybe you're not saying this, but this is what I think is correct, is that when we talk about argument, it's always in the past tense. It's always in terms of like defining what happened, right? Like explaining, putting meaning to events. Nobody says, I'm going into an argument, or hey, don't say argument, say subjective self-expression. Like when we talk, we're trying, usually when we say the word argument, it's in terms of defining or explaining a situation, right?
Could be. I mean, I can argue for a position. That might be present tense. I can argue for a vision of the future. If I'm just playing with that word as we commonly use it. But again, like I'm going to try to build a case for, right? If I soften it out of the courtroom scene and broaden it a little bit.
Yeah. But I like what you're saying. If we're talking about it in terms of what happened between my wife and I, or my child and I,
right, every day,
self-expression makes more sense.
Right. I'm just trying to express myself here. But often it's kind of, and that it is. I mean, like I think that people are having arguments about subjective self-expression, and it comes out as this: I don't feel like my partner knows me or understands me. And part of that is on the listener, and part of that is on the speaker, because a lot of speakers are not clear. They're too verbose. They use too many words. They're talking all over themselves, so they're making it real hard on the listener. And that sucks for everybody.
I think that's good. I appreciate. I think I really have. I think I appreciate what you're saying about this. This helped me sort of think through, and I think I would have this conversation with my younger self about subjective self-expression and looking at that and not being adversarial. I think that is a key point. Not being adversarial.
Yes. Yeah. If you catch yourself being adversarial, you know you're not doing it well.
Right. You're just making enemies.
Yep. You're acting like one.
Yeah. Now that's
a person that you don't want to be an enemy to.
It's the very person. Yeah. Well, it's 1:00. I must go. You must go.
Jump off.
Thank you, everybody, for joining in. Thank you for the Beth Copeland. Thank you, Josh, for good words and discussion as always. God bless your day.
See you later. Lord willing, the creek don't rise.
There it is.